Hey everyone, before we get into the episode, just a quick reminder that the video versions of Digging for Kryptonite will end in March 2022. The podcast will continue on, but if you wish to continue being part of my Superman fan journey, which I very much hope you will, please make sure that you are subscribed to Digging for Kryptonite via your audio podcast platform of choice. We're on all major podcast platforms, so please make sure you subscribe so that you never miss an episode. And again, the video podcast will continue until March 2022. All right, and now, on with the show. Welcome to Digging for Kryptonite, a Superman fan journey. I am your host, Anthony Desiato. Joining me to discuss the Rebirth Superman run by Peter Tomasi and Patrick Gleason is returning guest, sweet Bernie Gerstmayr.
You threw a sweet Bernie in there. Wow. The All Yeah crew will love that. That's great.
Speaking of which, I wanted to ask you, for people who want to see and hear more of sweet Bernie, is that the place to go? Is it the All Yeah Skokie Facebook page?
Yeah. So I'm on the crew on the All Yeah Comics Skokie at the All Yeah Comics Skokie store just outside Chicago, Illinois. And All Yeah Comics Skokie Facebook is where we'll do live sales. Joe Crone is the point man there and is doing great work. And he's doing a lot of social media and videos and working a lot with Art Baltazar, one of the owners and creators. So it's cool.
Very nice. And before we dive into this, another, I think, very cool personal Superman connection. Do you mind sharing with the audience what you did today? You added to your family.
Yes. So in July, we lost our dog of 10 or 11 years. So we took a little bit of break, kind of reevaluated what we were doing, and sent one of our girls to college. And my daughter's a freshman in high school, and my wife found herself more alone in the house. And she's like, I think we need another dog sooner than later. So we found and we rescued a Maltese Havanese dog, which is small, like 15-pound kind of dog. But she's got a really nice tan cream little brown coat, and we named her Shelby as Clark Kent's dog in Smallville. So I knew you would appreciate that when I shared and texted that to you. So yeah, so she's great, and our family's already really happy with her today. So
That's great. And you shared that they're upstairs watching a movie, including your daughter named
Lana, my youngest daughter, Lana, named after Lana Lang.
That's perfect, man. I love it. It's one of those things, we all have this deep affection for the character, and when you see specific instances where that's manifested in your life, it's such a beautiful thing. So I'm so excited to have you back on the show, your first appearance of 2022.
Woo!
This is the second of two episodes looking at the Rebirth era of the Superman titles. Last week we had Scott Honig on. We talked about the Dan Jurgens action run. This time we're looking at Tomasi and Gleason on Superman. Nice. This closes one of the few remaining gaps in my post-crisis Superman reading. There's not too much left that I haven't read at this point. All that's really left is the New Krypton saga.
Okay.
From the 2000s, the New 52, and Bendis. And other than that, I've essentially read everything from Crisis forward. So it's exciting to close one of those few remaining gaps here.
Is that New Krypton one the one with is that the one Jeff Johns did, and with the Last Stand on Krypton and all that kind of stuff too?
Yes. And we very likely will be getting to that before the year is out on this podcast.
Cool. Nice. That's awesome.
Yes. And this also, mentioning Smallville a moment ago, this also concludes a thematically tied run of episodes, because we looked at Superman and Lois season 1, the entirety of the Smallville series when we did our wish list episode, and then this Rebirth era. So 4 episodes that really dealt with the farm and family. So I hope that people have enjoyed this run of episodes. And now we're going to close it out strong with this one.
Yeah, that's a good segue, because some of the things in my notes I made, actually, a few of the aspects of this chapter, the Rebirth chapter, I do think that Superman and Lois writers are looking at some of this, not necessarily as, well, maybe I shouldn't speak too soon with some of the Bizarro stuff, but I definitely see themes that have been taken from this era that have translated very well to the CW show. I think it's made a big difference coming away from the other CW Arrowverse. I think the stuff we're going to talk about today is a big reason why that's show's doing well.
Yes, I do agree with that. You definitely do see a number of parallels. I think watching Superman and Lois, you do get a strong sense they're pulling from across the Superman mythology, but in particular this era. I mean, certainly the fact that we're dealing with Clark as a father here, which is new territory in the comics. Clearly they took a lot from there. The show's take on the Eradicator is very similar to the version that Tomasi and Gleason introduce here. To your point, we'll see about Bizarro. I know one complaint you had about this run though was that you wanted more Bizarro. Right? Was that the thing because it was only 3 issues and you were hoping that it would have been a year-long arc, right?
This audience would be Anthony's delving into sarcasm. Of all the characters in the Superman universe, Bizarro is one of my least, and I'm sorry if I'm offending any fans out there, but I'll talk about why when we get to that point. It's just always been a bone of contention with me.
Fair enough. To be honest, I feel like, I hate to say this, but I feel like after the Bizarro-verse arc from this run, my affinity for Bizarro generally has diminished. But we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it.
I'm telling you, it's not good.
So the run that we're talking about, co-written by Peter Tomasi and Patrick Gleason. Patrick Gleason was the primary penciler, although it was really a rotating stable of artists who worked on this book, which came out twice a month, which I'm sure accounted in large part for why we had so many artists.
And good ones, truthfully. Like a pretty awesome slate in that gallery of artists.
Yes. I would have preferred more consistency within each arc, but that's not a knock on any of the artists. I agree with you. I don't know that there was really any artist whose work I didn't like. It was just that I didn't love jumping from artist to artist within one 6-part story. But I think that was a necessary evil if they wanted to pump this book out as frequently as they did.
Yeah, I agree. And I think coming out of New 52, they were ready to do anything they could to, like, we better do 2 times a month to get people back, because it was pretty rough.
Right. So that's the period of time we're talking about. The New 52 has ended. We have now entered the Rebirth era, the return of hope and optimism to the DC universe. Wally West has returned, and with him, the heart of the DC universe as they build it. And so this run in particular, we're looking at the 2016 Superman series, issues 1 through 45. There was also the Superman Rebirth special that preceded it, as well as a Superman special that wrapped it up. I also took a look at the short story that Tomasi and Gleason did in Action 1000. So that's primarily what we're looking at. We purposely excluded the Reborn crossover with Action Comics because I talked about that last week with Scott when we looked at the Action run. Though when we get there, Bernie, if there's anything that you want to share about that, feel free, but we did cover that last time. So before I give my take, my big picture take, I want to toss it to you first. And I want to ask you basically what I asked Scott last week about the Action run. Did you read this as it was coming out, and how did the reading experience differ, reading it then versus rereading it for this podcast? What were your takeaways?
I am one of those fans that even when the content is not great, I will continue to push through. I am not the fair weather. I don't like what they're doing with Superman. I'm not going to buy the books. I'm not going to read anymore. So when we hit New 52, that was hard. I pushed through, continued to read. When we got to Rebirth, I was super excited for what they were moving towards. I continued to read, and I read it every time it came out. I think that reading it when it came out, because of the span of time it puts in between when I'm reading the issues, it felt very fresh. It felt very good. It was quality. I love the team that they had on there, and it was a breath of fresh air. However, when you read them back to back in trade format, a few of the trades, a few of the arcs, they are 5 or 4 issues that could be done in 2. It really did plot. It really did drag. I found myself having a hard time pushing through some of the trades, but I still found a ton of nuggets of awesome character traits, awesome shifts of tone, of where they were going with the character that we haven't seen in a while. That lent it really great for us to talk about tonight. So,
all right, fair enough. I I don't want to rehash the entire episode, that I did last week, but there are certain things that carry over. Like I said last time about the Jurgens run, and I would now include the Tomasi and Gleason run in that as well. I 100% understand why someone reading this at the time in 2016, after enduring the New 52, if you didn't like the New 52, right, and then later knowing what would come with Bendis, right, for people who didn't enjoy Bendis, I understand why this run probably holds a very special place and why it felt like a return to form for the character and a return to the version of Lois and Clark that we knew, but also now in new territory as parents, which I think is a wonderful angle. So again, especially for people who read it as it was coming out, I really get the appeal of it. Reading it in a vacuum, like I did now, and like I said last time, I had read maybe the first dozen issues as they were coming out. I had this little experiment where I was dabbling in monthly comics again for a period of time, and I had this on my list. And I did like it, but I ultimately decided to switch back to trade. And then, of course, years went by, and I never finished it. And it was always on the list. Mm-hmm. And it was always one of those runs that I heard nothing but amazing things about. And I think that it created expectations that were really too high. I think that has a lot to do with it. So overall, there was a lot that I did like about this run. And I love these creators. I cannot stress this enough. I mean, I'm a big fan of Tomasi and Gleason. And I appreciate so much of what they did. But in the end, just like with the Jurgens run, there was a measure of disappointment. I did not enjoy this run as much as I thought I would and as much as I wanted to. And I recognize I'm probably in the minority out there. And I want to actually give a shout out. There's a fellow Superman podcaster out there. He does a show called Truth, Justice, and Hope. And he's going issue by issue through these Rebirth comics. And he loves it.
Wow.
And that's great. So for anyone who is like, I can't believe Anthony and Bernie, they were in love with this run. There are others out there who maybe feel the way you do. And I know we'll give the run a fair shake. And again, I really want to stress, I didn't hate it, but it definitely did not live up to the expectation that I had for it. And I am with you. There were definitely trades where it was a little bit of a chore to get through, and it definitely felt like stories could have been told in less issues. And like you said, if you're reading it month to month, maybe you're not clocking that as much. But when you read them one right after another, it sort of becomes a little bit more pronounced.
And I wonder if, we gave each other a reading assignment and you're doing that in a certain amount of time. I wonder if you're going to the library and you find these and they have all 7 volumes, if you're not tasked to read all 7 within a certain time frame, and you say, you know what, I'm gonna do number 1 and delve a little bit more into it, maybe it might not have been such a hard reread. I think for us, I took a ton of notes as usual, and everything from quotes that I really love from this. There are some panels that you don't really see a lot, which I think was really kind of cool about some of the things that Gleason did well and Mankey did, and even Ivan Reis is in there. There's plenty of good we're going to talk about tonight. So I think we don't have to warn the listeners too much. You're going to hear some positives that will tell you, let's go do this and let's read.
Oh yeah, for sure. Just to, I guess, elaborate a little bit more. Like I said, there's a lot that I enjoyed. I love Clark as a father. No surprise here. I always talk about how my own fatherhood has impacted the way I look at these stories. And so I love that aspect. I love that the mythology has been moved forward in an organic and meaningful way. So that's fantastic. I love the setting on the farm. It's not Smallville, but as a diehard Smallville fan, I love this setting for the Kent family. I think that's wonderful. And there are some really, beautiful, quiet character moments. I teared up a bit during the Superman 45, the finale issue, where they're packing up the farm. So there were wonderful moments like that, I guess. And maybe this was just an unrealistic expectation on my part. I guess I was hoping / expecting a little bit more of that. And I found like a lot of the stories were very action packed, but I didn't have as many of those more meaningful moments that I guess I thought I was going to get. There was a lot that I thought was really cool in concept, but maybe not so much in execution. And
Mhm.
finally, the last thing I'll say before we get a little bit more specific into this is I really think the Superman and Lois TV show has spoiled me in a big way, especially when it comes to the parenting aspect. Because what we're getting on that show, you know, there you have two sons, not just one, and they're older, and that opens up all of these other issues. And I feel like the show, and I know I've spoken at length about Superman and Lois, and I will continue to because I love it so much.
Yeah.
But what I love about that show is that the tension within the family is it never overlooks the fact that there's this bedrock of love and trust between them all. But there is very believable tension from the pilot when the boys find out that Lois and Clark have been keeping this huge secret from them, to John's emerging powers, to Jonathan struggling with not having all of that, them keeping the secret. I feel like they've mined that so well, and they've done it in a way that feels very, very real and nuanced and emotional. And I read this run, and you know, John's 10, and it's a different medium, and I guess it just didn't scratch that itch for me in the same way that the show did. And that's not a failing of the comic, but at the same time, that's the context that I'm coming in with. That's the perspective. So maybe that helps shine some light on why I wasn't maybe as in love with this as people were when they were reading this for the first time. And this was, at the time, the first and only instance of Lois and Clark in this parenting role.
Yeah. So number 45 is titled Truth, Justice, Family. And that really should be the overarching like subtitle for Superman and Lois. Like I really think that you can't have the first two without the third in that show. Like there is tension because it's real. They don't treat it. It's not a hokey Hallmark family. It's a very real family with real stuff they're dealing with. But there's the underlying thing of we will always stick together even when things get hard, which I think makes it honest. I think it makes it what you hope for. Like Superman has always stood for hope. So Superman and Lois should give you hope of what a family could be, even though we don't always get that in your own families or when you look at the news or across America. But it's realistic in a sense that they're real issues, but it allows us to continue to go, I want to strive for that. I would love to be like that. I want to be like Superman and his family, even when they go through hard stuff. When you talked last episode with Scott, did you cover the Road to Rebirth, Superman, Lois and Clark trade?
Yes, not in incredible depth, but yes, we did talk about it.
So good. So the listeners, if you're going to read this stuff, they have to read that first. I really feel that they really need to read that trade or that set to understand why this is important that Lois and Clark and John are here, and how they've been brought back from another multiverse or another version after convergence, which is cool. I don't know what you said yet. I haven't listened to the episode, but that Lois and Clark trade actually stands as something really important to my Superman collection. I think that's a big jump back onto the right path for what Superman needs to be in the 21st century.
So while I was not so hot on the Jurgens run overall for reasons that we talked about, that was one of my very favorite stories that he did in that period of time. So yeah, I'm with you on that for sure.
Nice.
One other big picture question that I wanted to ask you, a personal one, if you don't mind. You are a father, as we've talked about, as am I. I'm just curious, especially reading this Tomasi Gleason run, were there instances in which scenes or moments or stories call to mind your own experiences as a dad?
So let's see. How old is John in this? Supposed to
10.
be? Is he 10? Gosh, like I don't. It's not a normal. I guess it's not a really normal question. Like, hey, have you ever had any instances where you were super and your son didn't get it? Like so. My daughter's never had an issue with dad's secret identity. Like, he's a band director. I wonder if he's a superhero also. It's one of the things that I really loved about this run, though, because the added layer of the son and having a kid, and that tension that comes with how would a real kid react if their dad was Superman? Like he's not happy about it all the time. Like, you'd think at a certain point, like, wow, this is so cool. My dad's Superman or my dad's superhero. It comes with a lot of stuff. It comes with a lot of baggage. It comes with a lot of pain and absence. And he can't always be the dad you want him to be there. I'd say the only connection I have is the jobs that I have as a teacher, working at my church on the weekends, and sometimes even working and helping out the comic book store. Finding that balance so that I'm still very present in my girls' lives, that becomes hard, And I remember, like, when my kids were young, they were like 4 or 5, and one of my good friends from Atlanta visited. We were driving past my high school, and my daughter goes, "Oh, that's Daddy's home," and he's like, "Dude, your daughter should not be calling school where you live." And I was like, "Oh." So that was a big redirection where, similar to Superman can't just be home all the time. He's got a job. He has to do what he needs to do to support not just his family, but the world. And that's the only connection I can make, where sometimes my daughters went, "Man, I wish Dad was around this time. I want to play, but I know he's got to go do his job." And I know you're going to get to that point too. So, but that's the only connection I can see. And that's one of the reasons I think I really enjoyed reading this run, because there are those parallels. Like, John's a real kid. And that's why I like how they wrote John. They didn't write him necessarily as a super kid all the time. They wrote him as a kid who deals with kid emotions.
Yes. Yeah, no, very true. And my son's only 2.5, so I, don't have the experience of parenting a 10-year-old or on Superman and Lois teenagers.
Right.
So we'll see when we get to that point. But, the only things that really kind of jumped out at me, little things in the first arc, when maybe it's even the first issue, when John falls from the tree branch and he hurts himself, and his invulnerability is sort of in and out, and they're not quite sure what's going on with that. And just that fear. It's like, anytime Milo has fallen down, it's that instant panic. It's the worst feeling. So that was something that definitely resonated. We also, in addition to the Superman run, you and I also did read Tomasi and Gleason's first arc on Batman and Robin. Now, for anyone who follows on social media, I had lofty ambitions of covering both runs in their entirety, but ultimately felt it was better to just really focus on Superman, but to at least read their first arc, Born to Kill, on Batman and Robin, just for basis of comparison. And man, I enjoyed that.
I was really glad we at least read the first arc. I have, I think, 4 other volumes of the arc in my collection, like as trades, and I'm now going to read those. I truly loved it. It's, for those who don't know, it's 2011, so we're looking at 5 years prior to Rebirth. And what's really cool about this arc is you see Bruce really struggling with being a dad with Damian, and Damian is hard. Damian is damaged, and lots of decision making of whether he's going to be a good person or an evil person. And it's cool because you can see, even if you haven't read the entire Batman and Robin arc all the way through, you can see in the Super Sons first volume of this Rebirth that Damian, don't forget Tomasi wrote both, and you definitely see the growth where Damian is now more calm. He's still got an edge, which we love, but I don't think the Damian from 2011 Batman and Robin would have gelled well with John Kent.
Agreed. That is a good point. I got a lot out of that run. I thought that and again, our focus will be Superman, but just to stay on this for a minute. First of all, as far as identifying, there's the scene deep into the arc where the villain Nobody, the son of Henri Ducard, has Damian and Batman's over the comlink, and Nobody is breaking Damian's bones, and he says to Bruce, like, "You're going to listen to your son break," and it was gut-wrenching.
It's devastating. Yeah, it was hard to read.
Like that. And I had read that arc before years ago, and I suspect it elicited a reaction even then, but now it really tears your heart out. So, but, and then in addition to that, going back to this idea of tension, I thought that in Batman and Robin, the tension was so believable and so effective because here you have, like you said, a son who's been bred to kill. That's his purpose, raised by the League of Assassins. And then you have Batman, who's made this solemn vow to never take a life. So it instantly puts them at odds. And unlike Clark, who takes very naturally to the role of the paternal figure, Bruce does not. Yes, he has mentored and trained all these kids, but not in a paternal, fatherly way. So there's that instant friction, but it feels very believable. And the villain, Nobody, really brought those issues to the forefront because his whole deal is that he believes villains should be punished to the fullest extent, i.e. kill them.
Yeah.
So I thought that, again, as far as the tension between father and son, I thought that arc really, really did a great job. I enjoyed that a lot. I do plan to continue the run as well.
It's definitely for readers, just fans of the DC characters. I would go back and at least read volume 1 of Batman and Robin. I mean, and not just, Nobody is rough. It's not just believes we should kill them, believes we should dangle them over a vat of acid and waste them away to nothing. It was disturbing, to be honest, reading that. And then I got torn up having kids, imagining what if I was like in a car and I'm not there yet, but then like the Batmobile just demolishes that wall and comes out of nowhere. It's pretty intense. It's a great read. And the art is gorgeous. It's amazing.
And it was once a month. And we were able to have all 8 issues in that. I have the hardcover and all 8 issues drawn by Gleason. It's a beautiful, beautiful book and very, like you said, very intense and very compelling. And not to spin this into a positive, but I think that was, again, another instance. But no, I just feel like that was another instance of sort of comparing the Superman run to something that I found more gripping. Again, whether it was the Batman and Robin arc or Superman and Lois. So just to sort of put this into context for people, I think that was sort of how I was coming into this.
I think ultimately, I hate sounding this way, but I ultimately think the Superman Rebirth run was going to be softer than the Batman and Robin Tomasi run.
Sure.
Like just from a sheer world building concept of where Gotham versus Hamilton is not the same. Can we, do you want to segue into, because we brought up Gleason now. Can we talk a little bit about another one of the positives is the art across the course of the Rebirth Superman stuff. I have never been, from before reading this, a big fan of Doug, I believe it's pronounced Mankey's art on Superman. In the Joe Kelly and like the earlier stuff, it always seemed very rigid, very etched. I didn't love it. It didn't seem round enough to me. He did a number of JLA arcs too, with the, I couldn't remember whether it was the Grant Morrison or the Mark Waid stuff, but
Joe Kelly.
It was Joe Kelly's good. Yeah. So again, I didn't love it. Reading this, I think it's been really cool. Every artist grows and changes and shifts based on what they do and what they work on. I really found myself surprised at how much I loved Doug's work, paralleling the differences between Patrick Gleason's work. How did you feel about the art? Tell me a little bit about what you think.
Same, to be honest. Like yourself, I've sort of had an arc in terms of my appreciation for Mankey's art, where I think I felt similarly to you in the past. What I've come to recognize is, I'm sure his style has evolved as he's grown in his craft, but I also think, and I would really have to go back and take a closer look, but I think that the inkers he's worked with, I think that may have played a role in this as well. I feel like in the past, maybe he was working with inkers with, I don't know, it's like a heavier or thicker line, or like something like that. I feel like, or maybe it's just that his own style has changed. I'm not sure, but I definitely have found myself enjoying his work far more now when we're looking at his more recent work than I did in the past. So, like I said, as much as I really wish that they had even like alternated arcs, and I said this when we did the Jurgens episode too, I don't love bouncing between artists within an arc.
Right.
It kind of irks me. But if we're going to have to do that, I was really happy to see him whenever he popped up.
Well, and you got Jorge Jimenez, you have Ivan Reis. I mean, it was a good. If we had a bounce, I was happy. Those are who we're bouncing back and forth from. It was really pretty to read and look at. I'm one of those people that, like, for example, and there's a new book that just came out. It's a new World of Krypton series.
Hmm.
I was so excited about who was writing it and what it was. I just could not get into the art. I'm one of those people that I need to have an artist that I really love for the book to hit me. Um, Patrick Gleason, I've just loved his stuff. I've met him at shows. He's also just the coolest dude. He is so chill, so kind, loves to talk, loves to do sketch work for you and that kind of stuff too. But um, Pat Gleason's work, I wrote it down somewhere that I wanted to tell you, like why I really enjoyed it. Hold on, I wrote it. So he has this vibe that is so Ed McGuinness, who I love, has this like full-on cartooning vibe. Okay. Jurgens has like a throwback to kind of a little bit of bronze. We see late 80s, 90s. Gleason finds a way to go like right in the middle. Like it's still a little comic strippy, but it's still very classic looking. It's not too full and round and odd, but it's so great. I've always loved what he does with not just Superman. I love how he draws Lois. I love how he draws the Superman family in general, like the characters. Um, there's just a certain approach to it that I would anything I see him do, I'm going to pick up.
Yeah, I'm with you, and on top of the art, he was also co-writing these stories
Yes.
with Tomasi, and even to the point where I think issue 45, they're both credited with the story, but Gleason is
Yeah.
credited with the words
Yeah.
along with the art. So it's so cool to see him take on that role as well. And I know he's continued writing on subsequent projects. I think he's doing Spider-Man now.
Yeah. Yeah. He shifted into Marvel.
So very, very cool. So let's talk about the first arc, Son of Superman. And I
Okay.
guess even before that, we have the Rebirth special that's tidying up some of the business of the New 52 world where the New 52 Superman has died. And this will come as no surprise, and I suspect you felt similarly given your love of our shared love of the death of Superman.
Yeah.
I like that they used our Clark's death as sort of the jumping off point and framing device for Clark. He brings the remains of the New 52 Superman to his fortress because he's been through this. He's died and come back. So
Yeah.
the idea that, he's waiting for a return, which of course we know is not going to happen. But I thought that was, again, especially loving the death of Superman, I thought that was a cool way to get into the story, and thematically ties in with the whole rebirth idea.
Well, and especially because this Superman is that Superman.
Mm-hmm.
Like the one that died in our era that we love in 93. This is that Clark Kent from that dimension, from that verse. So he's going to go, hey, it worked this time. Let me try again. And then just saddened that no, it's not how it works. Yeah. So, okay. I have very few notes on the first arc. I really love it though, but I really enjoy the Batman Wonder Woman showing up. Because anytime somebody's in a show from a different dimension or a different universe, there's going to be concern that are they the Clark that we want them to be? Are they the Superman that we should be teaming with, or should we be afraid of? Um, but I really did enjoy that interaction between the two of them. I think that was solid. They were insecure, but then felt good about it. And Wonder Woman, as usually, has to kind of walk Bruce off the ledge a little bit.
Yes. Yeah, and that was a nice. I like that we saw that early on in the arc, because then we had the nice circular ending where initially Clark keeps John inside, right?
Yeah.
And then at the end of the arc, he brings him out and introduces them, which is really nice. This was not our homework, but I was just curious. Did you read the Trinity series, especially the beginning part that was coming out during Rebirth?
Was that the Matt Wagner Trinity, or was that? Oh no, that was the actual
Francis,
Rebirth.
yeah, the Francis Manapul
No, I
series.
did not. That's actually a gap in mine, because I usually get anything Superman's in, but I was like, I just can't. I couldn't get too many things. Did you? How did you enjoy it?
I've only read a little bit of it. It was relatively short-lived.
Hmm.
And I can't remember. It might have started a little bit into Rebirth, or maybe it started at the beginning and it ended early. I've read the issues. V. Ken Marion drew a number of issues, so I've read
Yeah.
those. Those came later after Manipul had left. He was writing and drawing the book for the first, I don't know, 10 or 12 issues or so.
Okay.
And I liked the little bit that I read, but I mean, I didn't continue with it. So I guess that is another little, as much as I said I've closed the Rebirth gap, there's still little pockets here and there. But, and Scott and I talked about this last time. There was this weird bifurcation almost in this era where for the beginning part before Superman Reborn,
Hmm.
you had our Superman from the post-crisis pre-Flashpoint world
Right.
basically on the New 52 Earth. And then after Reborn, those versions of Lois and Clark are merged. So
Yes.
for the beginning part, you have this dynamic where they know, like you said, he's from another dimension and they don't know if they can trust him initially. So I guess your mileage will vary as far as how effective you thought that was, but
Yeah.
that's the world that we're working with. But yeah, I definitely like the sort of the parallels between the beginning and the end with him
Right.
introducing John.
I mean, the first arc, the big parts of the first arc is we see the Eradicator again, which is a nice throwback too for those fans of that Superman from that verse. Um, great things like we got to fight on the moon. They're like beating the crap out of each other on the moon. Um, Lois is in the Hellbat suit, which was kind of great. I thought it was something different that you don't usually get to see. There's a line in there too that I mean, I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and it was like John needs you to be his Obi-Wan was a line in there that I was like, that's kind of a cool throw in. My favorite, I know this is going to be weird to be favorite, but we brought back Bibbo Babowski.
Yeah.
Like that was like that's little tiny cameos. I was like, oh, now you know that Tomasi and Gleason are fans of the same era that we love too, and they're like, well, let's put Bibbo back in there and see what happens. So I enjoyed that kind of stuff, but it's not a super big arc, but it's got some cool battles in it with the Eradicator.
Yeah, I definitely I enjoyed the Bibbo cameo. And I
Yeah,
enjoyed this take on the Eradicator, which I'll get back to in a second. I really
yeah,
enjoyed the first couple of issues, and I thought that gave us again that tension that we were talking about, where they're in hiding, and that's creating its own stress within the family, particularly for John. And we do have this scene where he's with Kathy, the neighbor, and they're on the
right.
tree, and he falls. And that leads Clark to take him to the fortress, and then that's when we meet the Eradicator. But yeah, I enjoyed the beginning part. I guess I felt like once we got to the Eradicator portion of the story, it was a lot of action. And
Yeah,
like you said, there was cool stuff like Lois getting in on it and the Hellbat suit. Like that was really cool. But I felt like, again, those quieter moments that I was enjoying early
yeah,
on kind of just gave way to the action. And I guess it's just a matter of taste. I am not as interested in
yeah.
that, I suppose. I much preferred the more, character driven family moments. So that's where that arc lost me a little bit.
Well, and it's funny you say that. So like me and Joe at all, yeah, like we'll talk about like fun pitches. Like if you had to do if you were tasked by DC to write a story for Superman, what would you write? Or for this character, what would you do just for fun? And I do find myself, I don't automatically gravitate to the Superman battling insert the villain. I kind of really enjoy Superman as Clark dealing with Earth issues, like family issues, or honestly, and we talked about this in the Bronze Age a little bit too, humanity issues, like stuff that our world needs to fix that we maybe could use a little help from a Superman. Um, and we'll talk about this later. There's some issues that really touch on this nicely, but I think that's one of the reasons I do like the Tomasi Gleason run because we do get more of that flavor than we definitely had on the New 52 or even right before it throughout the 2000s. Um, this is what this first arc will be an example though of my complaint, like why Netflix shows or HBO shows do better than network TV, where network TV is like 23 episodes. Netflix and HBO go, no, 10's fine. Um, this was a 6-part arc that could have been 3, maybe 4. But again, I think it might be taste. I think it could be us going, we don't really need all the spirits of Krypton coming back. Like that was a whole extra issue we didn't need. Just have it end with the Eradicator and close it up in issue 4.
Yeah, sure. And that's the thing, people might be perfectly happy with the flow of this arc and the balance between the action and the quieter moments. I think that I realized this pretty late in the game, but I was like, there's not a ton of narration.
No.
In these stories, very little, in fact. And I think that's something, and for longtime listeners, that was that was the thing when I went back to the Jeff Loeb, Joe Kelly era in particular, those Jeff Loeb issues. Even if the stories weren't the best, they were all narrated by someone from the supporting cast, and it gave you some cool insight into how they saw Clark and or Superman. And I think that's in large part actually was kind of missing for me, because even if I'm not so invested in the action, I'm curious what's going through the mind of Clark or John or Lois. And I guess you could argue through their actions you're seeing that, but that might be a little generous in certain instances. I think that would have gone a long way for me towards balancing that out a little bit. And I realized that I was thinking about it today. I was like, we're going to talk about it. I was like, I feel like that was, for me, like a big thing that was missing.
Yeah, I would agree. Like, I think it would have been really cool to hear Lois's take, like hear her tone telling the story as we watch Superman and John deal with this in real time.
Yeah, that would have been perfect. And also because, Lois has plenty to do, but a lot of the big moments, and especially the parenting moments, a lot of them are Clark and John. So to get Lois's voice in there more, if she's the one sort of taking us through the story, I think that would have been cool. Going back to the beginning though of the story, we have the sequence where a hawk swoops down.
Yeah.
And makes a move for the cat Goldie, and John's heat vision goes awry and he fries the cat. And I have a few things to say about this, because later in the arc, there's a moment where Krypto seems like he's a goner when he's absorbed by the Eradicator. Thankfully, Krypto makes it out. And then, reading the Batman and Robin arc, Damian kills a bat. So I'm saying to myself, like, what? Tomasi's got a thing with animals.
Yeah, he's not... Pete is not going to be loving that. There's going to be a lot of animal activists not happy. I was surprised. I forgot about that. Like, the cat is just like Christmas Vacation, like toast. Like, yeah, I think it was interesting because he was also really torn up.
Yes.
And that was really important to see that, again, what would a 10-year-old deal with if fire came out of his eyes and roasted his favorite pet? Like,
right.
It's not normal. Like, so I think they handled it well, but it was still odd.
Yeah, but so here's where I actually liked it. I didn't like what happened to the cat, but for the record, but I liked that inner turmoil that it elicits, and it speaks to what we saw on Smallville and in Man of Steel and on Superman and Lois. It's a painful, confusing process for these powers to emerge. It's a confusing time for anyone at that age as they're changing, but especially dealing with that. And I think that's a modern spin on this that is very relevant and resonant. People can understand why, how challenging that might be to go through something like that. Where I really had an issue, and I know I'm jumping way ahead. Well, not that far ahead, but I'm jumping ahead a few arcs to Black Dawn. Mm-hmm. I'm curious to get your take on this, because we find out in that arc, in addition to the fact that Hamilton County is not just this peaceful little community, but it's this safe haven for these alien refugees, which we can talk about that too. But we also find out that Manchester Black is back and pulling strings, including wreaking havoc with John's powers.
Yeah.
Before, I guess you could probably tell where I'm going with this. How did you feel about that?
It felt kind of dirty. Like, like you're messing with a kid. That was weird. Like, that was borderline kind of like mental abuse. like if you, I don't know how I'd explain it, like the same ickiness you feel about a person that kidnaps kids. Like that started to kind of come into play where he's legitimately playing really weird head games with John and messing with him physically. Like there was something just icky is a good way to, I think, for me to say it. I didn't like it at all.
Yeah, neither did I. I guess I didn't go specifically there, although your point is well taken. I think for me, what kind of bugged me was to sort of, I guess, absolve John of frying Goldie.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was the right choice, because I think it's more interesting if this is something that he has to grapple with and he learns the lesson that he has to be careful about his powers. And this is going to sound nitpicky, but whatever. Early in the Black Dawn arc, Batman shows up at the farm, and I really did like. I think that, unless I'm confusing this with one of the earlier stories, I think that's the one where like Bruce and Damian are in the barn, and like they're having this clandestine meeting, and then Lois is like, "What are you doing?" And like they all go into the kitchen. That was a fun moment. But Bruce is like, I've studied John, and with his half human, half Kryptonian genome, he should be much more powerful than you. I was saying to myself, look, I'm not a geneticist. Maybe I'm missing something very obvious, but why would him being half human?
I don't see that at all. Yeah, no.
The opposite. It's like, I don't. I think
he'd be weaker. He would be weaker. That did throw me as odd, because I didn't understand where the science would be with that one. If anything, he'd be less super. So.
Yes. Again, not a scientist. Maybe I'm missing something,
No.
but anyway,
that's the scene that I love, though. That says, I believe Damian says, Batman doesn't eat pie.
Yes.
And it's like, it's just really funny, because it would be natural. Like, come on in, have a piece of pie. It's like the dude's wearing a cowl and a black cape, dressed as a bat. Like, I just don't see him sitting down like, oh, strawberry rhubarb. Like, I don't see that happening.
Yeah, but that was a very humorous scene. Again, the science aside. But I didn't love Manchester Black. I didn't love that he was responsible for these power fluctuations, because I think it's believable enough that the powers are fluctuating on their own due to the fact that he's this human Kryptonian hybrid. That's enough.
Yeah.
That's the way Superman and Lois played it, and I thought it worked really well. And then it does create that inner tension, and I think that works fine. You don't need that external force. So I thought that cheapened it. Also, one of Manchester's big plays is still the same MO, right? He not just like Mr. Nope, not Mr., but just like nobody in the Batman and Robin arc believes that Superman doesn't go far enough, and of course made his debut in the famous, now classic, Action 775. What's so funny about truth, justice, and the American way? But now, rather than trying to convince Superman, now he's targeting John. And, ickiness aside, the fact that he's given up on trying to change Clark's mind, but now he wants to try to sway the next generation. That aspect was okay, but he's back to his same bag of tricks. He makes John see Lois lose her leg.
Right.
Which, very recently on the podcast, I covered the Joe Kelly run on Action, and we reread the ending battle arc. And Manchester does a very similar thing there. He makes see Lois die, and he thinks that it's real, and it's to test him. So, I don't know. I just kind of felt like, all right, like, been there, done that, was sort of my feeling with Manchester in that.
I just thought we were done with Manchester Black. I just thought it was in 775. That was a really cool shift in tone, and how Superman dealt with it at the end, and where he goes, like, done. But I just don't know what more we can get from Manchester Black, except for very similar to what we see in like the Superman and the Authority stuff that's just recently been happening now in the very newest runs of Superman and Action Comics. I just don't see why he's super relevant or needed here. I don't think it's a great villain. I think we've seen it before.
Agreed. I was not thrilled when I turned the page and I saw this, and I was like, oh, all right. Conversely, now, on a positive note, I did like this new spin on the Eradicator, going back to the Son of Superman arc. And to your earlier point about ways in which the Superman and Lois writers may have taken their cues from this period of comics in particular, yeah, this is an Eradicator who is able to absorb Kryptonian souls. So what did you think about that?
Well, I'm reading it going, this looks like Morgan Edge. Even how it's just weird. He's obviously came out before, but I'm looking at the art and even it looks a little like that actor, like from Superman and Lois. It was interesting. It came off as very supernatural versus very scientific. Like that Krypton, that Eradicator was very science driven, very genetics driven, like perfection in genes. And for that weird soul sucking thing, like it just seemed like an odd shift. It went very magical spirits, supernatural that I wasn't ready for. And that's why, I mean, I didn't dig it as much. That's why I was like, just stop. Just no, don't do issue 5. I don't know. Again, that's my opinion, everybody. I love the Eradicator character without all that.
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of two minds. I'm a little torn on this because in the Jurgens episode, I talked about how, like Manchester Black, I wasn't all that thrilled with Doomsday's return in Jurgens' inaugural arc for a lot of the same reasons we just mentioned with Manchester. It's like, very effective the first time.
Right.
Kind of hard to do much with them moving forward.
No, yeah.
And so with the Eradicator, I guess it begs the question if they had brought back the more traditional version of the Eradicator that, you and I are familiar with, right? This Kryptonian device that ultimately then took on human form or humanoid form, as opposed to, I guess the angle in this was that the Eradicators were this like army of robots that were created and programmed on Krypton.
Yeah. Yes.
And then ultimately fused into this one being with the ability to absorb the souls. I wasn't thinking the supernatural angle, but you're right. It did have more of that flair. This is where, and they had the benefit of hindsight. Like that's the thing. But I feel like the Superman and Lois writers took the best of this, the idea, and they didn't frame it so much in terms of souls, which I do agree gives it more of that supernatural vibe, and went more with consciousness.
Right. And
they were transplanting minds into the humans' bodies.
And and you kind of started to see this in the CW Supergirl stuff, where you see like the artificial intelligence of like Supergirl's mom is in the crystal kind of deal.
Right.
And that even harkens back as far as the Donner stuff with, Jor-El and Lara being inside the crystals. So yeah, I think you're right. The Superman and Lois show went, I like this. No, like, and they found a good happy medium, I think, and that's why it worked in the show, I think.
For sure. Let's take a quick break, and then we will continue our discussion. We'll be right back. And we're back. So we talked about the inaugural arc of the run by Tomasi and Gleason on the Superman title. One last quick thing, just to jump back to that Rebirth special for a minute. I didn't mention this, and I wanted to. I really liked that Clark took note of how the New 52 Clark had honored both sets of parents in the fortress. That was a nice touch. And then our Clark adds the New 52 Superman to that lineup of statues. I thought that was a very nice moment. So moving forward, so I read this in trade paperback form. Is that what you did as well?
Same. Yep.
All right. So volume 2 is titled Trials of the Super Son. And we start off with this one-off at the Hamilton County Fair. I love, we got a couple of issues in this run. This one, and in particular, the finale, number 45, where the Kent family goes to, those were some of my favorite issues. I really enjoy. That's like what I wanted. That's like what I wanted more of, but I enjoyed that here.
I am totally with you. I know that sounds so lame as like a Superman fan. It's like, I really just wanted to go to the carnival. That's all. I don't know why. Like Clark and Lois and John sitting on the Ferris wheel brings me such joy. I don't know. Or just playing games together. I think it's just the family side of it. I think it's the real life side of it. It just was fun.
I know I keep mentioning Superman and Lois, but I feel like it's very germane to our conversation here. I remember seeing reviews, I think on IMDb, for some, especially some of the early episodes of Superman and Lois. And in particular, some people complaining that there wasn't enough Superman action. And that's like never a complaint I would have there. And I know
No.
I said this when I did the Superman and Lois episode, but there was one like very early on where there were only like a couple of scenes of him in costume. And it's like, I
Yeah.
didn't miss it, but I do understand that that's a major aspect of the story and that spectacle in particular. And even more so when we're talking the comics, I think you can get away with a little bit more, on an hour-long drama on television
Yeah.
as opposed to the comics. But yeah, I don't need a ton of action, to be
No.
honest, as long as it's not boring. And I don't find those family scenes boring, but it was cool to see the family at the fair and, Clark making this promise not to use his powers. And then he
Right.
overhears the, those thieves planning to, make off with the admission money, and he takes care of them quietly. And you get to meet some of the other townspeople who will
Yes.
play a role later on. While we're here, let me jump back to the Black Dawn arc.
Oh boy. Okay.
Oh, so let me, again, man, I didn't really care for this take that the neighbors, Kathy and her grandfather, and the science teacher and the mayor and like the police chief, they were all these alien refugees. And their ship was plugging a dimensional rift and preventing these monsters from coming through. I don't know, what was your take on that?
I liked the idea if it was a few. Like if it was, I really actually enjoyed the Frankenstein issues where I forget, was she worked at the bank or something, or the editor of something,
Mm.
where basically she's a villain that Frankenstein is basically trying to, like, an invader he's trying to catch. I think I would have enjoyed it if it wasn't like the whole, like the majority of the town are aliens. Like it's a little too X-Files for me. If it was a few key people, like I could have seen they started planting seeds with the grandpa. Like, there's something wrong with Cobb. Like he's not a regular grandpa. He's protective, but there's something odd, like the weird blink in his eye every now and then you'd see. Um, like we were saying, I didn't love all of this, man. Like it was like glimmers of like, oh, that's cool. Oh, they went that way. Like there's a lot of that throughout every single one of the story arcs. I don't feel there was any one that I went, that was solid. I think there was glimmers of awesome hope inside each of them and really cool tales. But I actually really liked the single issues, the one-offs, more than the actual stories arcs themselves.
Same here, although I don't know. I have a feeling you and I are going to differ when we get to the Kent family road trip issues.
Oh,
But
maybe.
we'll see.
Oh, that was a little too. We'll get to that.
All right, maybe we won't diverge too
No,
much.
I
But it's
think
fine if we do.
no. I know where you're going. I'm a little in agreement. I felt like it should have come with the recording of the national anthem.
Yeah, well, look, we
Like,
don't have to go chronologically. Why don't we just talk
yeah.
about it while we're here? Because it is, I do think it's a natural. I guess the last thing I'll say about the Black Dawn
Yeah.
arc and this revelation about the townspeople being aliens, and maybe I missed. I don't know that I got the sense that so many of them were. But was that the idea that it was like the majority of the townspeople?
It was a majority of them, yeah. Like all the key people in the town, like the major adults, yeah.
I guess I don't love the concept of that.
No.
I suppose it's. I guess I just like the idea of Hamilton being this normal, quiet place
Right.
for them because there's so much insanity across the rest of the DCU. And, even over the course of this rebirth era, the
Right.
Kents move back to the city. And, we get them selling off the farm in the final issue here, but they've been living in Metropolis. And the Jurgens
Yeah.
arc makes that very clear. Like we always see them in their apartment there.
Yes.
So it's like they're not even there all that long. I guess I just feel like it adds an unnecessary layer to it. I don't
Right.
hate it, but I could have done without it.
Well, that's what I mean. Like it's one of those I liked but didn't love.
Yeah.
I think that's a good way to say a lot of the major story arcs in the Rebirth Superman stuff is I liked it, but I didn't love it. Looking back at it now, I think lots of great seeds planted. And unfortunately, not all the seeds got to grow into flowers because they got fired and they hired Bendis.
We'll get there.
Yep. Yeah.
So I'm jumping ahead a few volumes in the trade
Yeah.
paperback collections, but there's one that's called Hopes and Fears. So I have to confess, out of that trade, I only read those two because those were the only two issues written by Tomasi and Gleason. The rest were guest arcs. Okay, good.
Yeah.
And
I
so,
skimmed. I flipped pages, went, okay. No. And then I focused mainly on the declaration 2-part. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have this very patriotic road trip that the Kent family takes. And again, I think this is another instance where I liked it in concept more in execution. And I don't mean to sound unpatriotic, but it just felt so heavy-handed. Like they were
exactly
like bludgeoning us with this.
Yeah. That literally was the phrase I was going to use. I'm really glad you used it because nothing was wrong about it. Nothing was inappropriate about what they said. It wasn't even taking it from one political side or the other. I think it was honoring history well. I think it was a good history lesson for many people, but it just, like I was going to say, like, I feel like I should have heard like, like that should have been underlying the entire reading of those two issues. But I think it was a nice offshoot. I'm pretty sure that those came out around July 4th. I'm pretty sure those issues came out right around the holiday there. So it was a choice. It's again, I didn't dislike it because it was something different. It was they're on a vacation together. I love that aspect. Like they're doing a road trip. That's cool. We don't see that. Like Clark's in a car. Like why is Clark in a car?
I know. Well, and it's funny because anyone who's been listening closely to this might be like, what's with you guys? You complain about the issues that have too much action. Now we have 2 issues with no action and you're still complaining. I get it. I just, like I said, I do agree with you. I am more, I don't know. I'm more okay with these issues and more forgiving, quote unquote, of these issues because they did try something a little bit different and they were more in the vein of what I do tend to like. So, I wouldn't toss these out. Could this have probably been one? Yeah. And to be honest, once I finished the first one, I was like, there's another one of these? Like, so there was a little bit of that. There was a really good scene though, where they were at a restaurant and they were bringing in this homeless vet to eat.
Oh, that was great.
Right. And the restaurant tried to turn them away and, Clark stood up for him. And that was a great moment. And, so stuff like that I thought really worked. But I don't know, some of the rest of it, like when they were literally reading.
Yeah.
From
pages of it.
Yeah. Reading to John about history. It just felt more like an after school special type thing. So that lost me a little bit.
Well, and I think people should check it out. I think I'd be curious to hear other people's thoughts on it if they felt it was as heavy-handed as we were. Because that would have been, that was issue 27, 28. So that's 2018, maybe middle of 2018. So it depends on, there's a lot going on in the country that time.
True. Yeah, for sure. And a lot that's happened since. And again, the context certainly matters. I'll also admit, just to sort of give a sense of my arc reading this, we didn't talk about Multiplicity yet, but we will. I could not stand that arc. That did nothing for me. And then we went into Black Dawn, which I had issues with that I've already discussed. And then we hit this. So, I'm at a point now in my reading where I'm just like, I'm not really getting out of this what I think the intention was and what other people seem to get out of it. So that's coloring my view a little bit. I'm not going to lie.
I would say for those listening, if you wanted a really nice dabble into what Superman Rebirth was, I think 1 and 6 are good reads. I think honestly, the getting to know Superman's family and learning more about John and what he's going through, some really cool cameos. Volume 6, Imperious Lex is on Apokolips. There's some solid writing and art in that trade. What do you think about that one?
I agree. That's the thing. I was saying to myself, I would, and this sounds so arrogant, so forgive me, but I was like, I would love to like recut this arc because I really think if you boiled it down to like a lot of the stories that you're talking about, it is really solid. And I think those would be the best representations of this. So yes, I did like Imperious Lex, and we'll get to that. But I guess just jumping back to the second trade again, not that we have to go chronologically, but the trials of the Super Son. So we talked about the county fair, and again, we get a nice return to the fair and the farewell issue number 45. We also get this I liked, this I appreciated. DC The New Frontier is probably my all-time favorite comic book story. So the fact that Clark and John go to Dinosaur Island and encounter Captain Storm, I was on board for that two-parter.
Well, and it's dedicated to Darwin Cook. Like that arc is, and that's huge. Like there's a sketch of him in the Hall of Fame at our store. Between and if you haven't read Superman Confidential yet, there's some just great Darwin Cook stories and artwork in that series too. I love, like, I don't have many issues, but anytime the Blackhawks or any like the World War II or early stuff comes in, I think it's such a cool shift to an older time. I can't read a ton of it, but I loved this cameo in this Dinosaur Island part. It was awesome.
Yeah, same here. And it was a really nice follow-up in the special that they did at the end of the actual 45 issue run. There was the special where they go back, they keep their promise to go back and get Captain Storm, and they do it, and you get to see him starting to acclimate to life back in the real world. And a great moment where he goes to deliver the dog tags to the families of his fallen brethren, and he goes to check into a motel, and he can't sleep inside, and so he goes out and he sleeps on the flatbed of his truck. That was great. I could have spent some more issues with Captain Storm on the road.
Yep, it was a classy move too, because I wonder if we've had a number of talks at the store about this. Like, would there have been Volume 8 if there weren't decisions to move into new creators with Bendis coming in? Would we have gotten more Tomasi Gleason stuff? I think we would have, and I think they would have returned to Dinosaur Island, but I think it was a very classy move to go, hey, our characters made a promise, so we have to stay true to that promise before we go away. So I just think that was a really, really cool, like, being on top of your game when it comes to being in charge of your content. I love that.
Yeah, the special was a nice touch. Without knowing what went on behind the scenes, my sense is that it was decided Bendis was getting the Superman books and the special, because Jurgens got a special too, as did Tomasi and Gleason, and I feel like that was sort of, somewhat of a consolation prize. Like, you get in one, bonus issue
to say goodbye,
to say goodbye and wrap up. And I think the fact, to your point, I think the fact that they chose to spend their special on Dinosaur Island with Captain Storm speaks to where they would have gone if they had gotten more time. So I agree with you. I think that's probably where that would have headed. But yeah, that was, again, a nice callback to New Frontier and a nice tribute to Darwin Cook. So yeah, that was a fun one. I was there for that. And I also did like the two-parter with Damian. Again, very heavy on the action, but you get to see their dynamic. It sets up their dynamic well. And of course that will segue into the Super Sons ongoing series, which I didn't read that. Oh, you didn't? I mean, I didn't. Like, ever? Or
no? Oh, I have the first trade. I picked it up and I was like, you know what? I should read this. So it's still on my list. It's next to my bed. I got to read it, but I'll probably pick it up after this. But I hear it's good, and it didn't last as long either.
I heard this was great, so I don't know.
I heard this was good.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Listen, and I don't know, the people listening to this might be like, listen, you don't have to qualify this for us. Some things you're going to like, some things you're not. And hopefully that's where people are landing. But audience, please know, I've felt conflicted over these past couple of episodes. I don't like to come on and just be like, I didn't really like this. I don't love to do that. I don't like to be in this position, but I gotta speak my truth. So here we are.
Well, at a certain point where we get worried, we start to sound like the two old guys in the Muppets sitting in the balcony, just going like, ha, that's terrible. That's the hard thing.
Yeah. Like I said, it's not. I really think this was just a matter of unrealistic expectations
Yeah.
in large part. What did you think of Multiplicity? This was a multiversal story where this villain Prophecy is hunting Superman across the multiverse.
So yeah, I think we might. I don't think we disagree. I've gone over my years. I mean, I got into comics late 80s, early 90s. So it was post-crisis. Going when I went back, I totally understood why they needed the Crisis on Infinite Earths. Shut it all down. There's too many things, too many characters, too many versions. Let's go with one. So like for decades, I was like, no, there is one universe. Stop messing around. I've kind of softened on that a little bit. It's like, you know what? I'm bored of this one universe. Let's bring in a few other things, especially when they started doing like Earth 2 and you started to see Owlman and the Crime Syndicate and that kind of stuff. I was like, all right, this is kind of cool. There's actually it's relevant now, but that the Justice League we see in the multiplicity in the is it multiplicity? Yeah, like the with the rabbit. Is that Captain Carrot?
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's yeah. So that team has been brought back again in the Infinite Frontier stuff, and there's a Justice League Incarnate series happening right now. It's fine, but again, it's to me it comes off as filler. Like a lot of the multiverse stuff is not. I don't know. I don't need to be a continuity snob, but I like to know what's going on. I like to not have questions like, wait, who's that? Is that the real one? How are they connected? Who died? Who didn't die? I don't love that, but I guess I'm less grumpy about the multiverse now than I used to be. But I didn't love this arc.
Sure. I mean, and I hear everything you're saying. I don't. The thing is, I don't have any objection to the multiverse in and of itself. This story
Yeah,
just didn't. I don't know. I don't know what it really said. Uh, I
it
mean,
didn't say
the fact that
say
Superman was
anything.
willing to sacrifice himself for the others, like, sure, but that doesn't tell us anything that we don't already know. And I guess, well, maybe I don't love the multiverse that much because I guess the idea maybe is that you would be so excited to just see all these other Supermen. That doesn't
Yeah,
do anything for me.
no,
So this arc, unfortunately, fell flat. I'm sorry
and
to
yeah,
say.
and you've said this on previous episodes too, where there's bad Superman. Oh, never seen that before. Like, like I, yeah, like I kind of like seeing. I'm okay seeing older versions of Superman if they work together and they help each other. I'm okay with that. I don't need odd versions of Superman. I don't love that too much. Um, so yeah, I wasn't. I didn't love it. I wasn't a big fan. I skimmed a lot of that one too. I was like, ah, like I tried a few, and then I saw this is not getting better, so I flipped a lot more than I should have probably.
It's okay. I mean, I get it. I really get it. So, and if there's anything that we're glossing over that you want to jump back to at any point, we certainly
Yeah.
can. But just to sort of move us along, that was Multiplicity. We talked about Black Dawn, and we also
Oh,
talked about Hopes and Fears. Yep.
there's a Black Dawn line that I did want to bring up
Oh, sure.
that I thought was really cool. Actually, I wrote it down. A few actually. So Lois says this. So where is it? It's in issue 24. But she says to Clark, "I'll trust you. I'll trust you'll always do the right thing, even if it kills you." And I just thought that like we know that she's seen that happen in the when he died. Um, but I think like he was concerned that she wasn't going to trust what he was doing and where he was going to go and how he's going to deal with this. And she's like, no, no, like I know that you're going to do the right thing. Like that's you can't not do the right thing. Which then leads to when Clark is so pissed off at Manchester Black and he's beating the living crap out of him and says, "I could kill you." And then Manchester Black says, "If you are capable of that, why aren't we having a toast over the corpse of Darkseid right now?" I was like, "Ooh, yeah." He kind of nails him on that one. Like Like he's Superman saying, I'm gonna kill you, I'm gonna kill you. And he's like, no, you're not. I know you're not. Because if you were that guy, Darkseid would be dead by now.
Yeah.
And I hate Manchester Black because he's right. It's like, you suck.
That was a cool moment. And yes, right, we know Superman will only ever go so far. But his rage at Manchester's moves against his son, that felt very palpable. I also, on a positive note, I did love that it was Lois who kind of snapped John out of it after he's been infected by the black goo. Or I mean, I don't even know what that was. But the fact that, she's like, Jonathan Samuel Kent, and, she's able to sort of, snap him out of it. So I appreciated that. Well, and you mentioned the line about Darkseid, so I think that's a perfect segue to the Imperious Lex arc.
Yeah. Before we do that, I would encourage readers, because we're talking about. We mentioned Darkseid, we mentioned Superman not killing, we mentioned him like rage. Philip Kennedy Johnson stuff right now in Action Comics, I would strongly suggest you should read that, Anthony, and our listeners should pick it up. There's really cool stuff going on with the dynamic of War World and Superman and his son, and what's ultimately coming. You're going to want to get on board for reading this. So I just think you'll like it.
All right. Right on. When we know this is dangerous sometimes, but I've heard amazing things. I'm very interested. I'm very curious. I've just wanted to sort of close these little gaps first before I dive in.
Going on. Buying future books.
But so once it's really the Bendis run that I want to take care of. And then, like I said, New Krypton we'll get to at the end of the year. New 52 will be beyond that, but that's sort of its own thing, so I'm not too concerned about that. So really, especially once we've taken care of Bendis, I'll feel pretty good about getting into the current stuff and catching up. And yes, you can expect episodes on that in the future. Probably not this year, but I am excited to get into all that.
Yeah.
So
cool.
Imperious Lex, this was probably one of my favorite arcs of this run here. What worked about this for you?
It felt like a Justice League Unlimited episode.
Oh yeah.
Like, I don't know. There were scenes in it that like felt very episodic cartoon kind of approach finally that I really enjoyed. And like when Clark and Lois and John are all like summoned to Apokolips, but they're all transported to different areas. They're not together. And like, I remember rereading that going like, oh, damn, what's going to happen? How are they each going to deal with this? And it's really cool, actually. I loved seeing each of their reactions, what they had to deal with to find each other again. And Lois kicking the Fury's ass. Like, I loved that whole section. And I've always loved the Furies. There's something so raw and crazy about them.
Yeah, that was definitely one of my favorite parts about it too. How quickly she rises within the ranks of the Furies. She's just so capable in it. And that's the thing, even though she's completely out of her element, it tracks. Given all the danger she's experienced and being the daughter of General Sam Lane, and of the wife of Superman, it's like, sure, I buy this. Also, going back to the bit about the animals, there was redemption for John Kent here because he saves
Yes,
he saves these dogs, these Apokolips dogs. So I like that. That was a nice moment of redemption for him. And what was one of the things that was cool about this, there was very little, other than the Reborn crossover, there were no direct crossovers between Action and Superman during this time. And now, having read both of them, you really can read each of them on their own track and get what you need. But there is that arc, Men of Steel, early on in the Jurgens run, where these beings, the remnants, have a vision of the future where Lex takes over Apokolips and brings forth death and destruction, and they want to kill him in the present to avoid that future. So I thought in at least some way, this was a nice sort of follow-up to that arc where you see him being called to Apokolips to rule, and him saying, no, it's actually Superman who is this prophecy. And sort of kicking all of that off. So yeah, I mean, it was cool. I have some thoughts on the ending, but do you have anything else along the way that you wanted to talk about?
It's funny. I'm looking at my notes about that too. So some of my favorite scenes was actually Superman and Lex kicking ass together. Like, I really enjoyed that inside the last issue of this arc. I thought that was really cool. But then, as much as I go, oh, how cool, then you read the end of the issue, and I was a little conflicted on all of that. So I'm going to hear what you think about the last scenes with Superman and Lex.
I guess the question that I would pose to you, and the question that I've been trying to answer for myself is, does Lex's decision to remove the Superman crest, does it track with like what we've seen in this? I don't know that the story really earns that moment. I mean, Lex is upset that Superman didn't respond to his earlier call for help, and that he still doesn't seem to fully trust Lex, but it felt like a bridge too far to smash the S symbol on the suit. What did you think?
And it's going to sound kind of weird, but I kind of thought it was too far for Superman to say what he said to Lex.
Oh.
Like, because honestly, the problem is too, this is not his Lex.
Well, now it is.
So now
we're that's the thing with this. Now we're past Reborn, right? So now we're in this merged timeline.
Oh, that's right. So this is his Lex from his universe now.
I mean, I don't know.
Yes, like, see, that's the thing where I feel like there's damage there, and like you can't repair it. Superman's got baggage from Lex, and whether this is that Lex or not, like, I feel like he's imprinting his baggage onto this Lex, which I can't believe I'm saying this, but I don't feel Lex fully deserved all of it.
Yeah,
like, he's still Lex, and he's still going to do certain things, but him calling him a hypocrite, Lex was trying to just do what he does best. He's still an arrogant bastard, but I mean, the fact that he was still wearing the S and trying to symbolize what he thought Superman stood for, as much as he hates that he's an alien, he was still trying to do that. I think tearing it off his chest was too far. But I can see why he's pissed, because I don't know if Superman really deserved to do that to him at that point.
Your point is well taken. Yeah, I was coming at it from the other angle, but I do get what you're saying. It just felt like, I don't know, to end on that moment, that's the thing. I know it's called Imperious Lex, but I don't know like how much of a Superman and Lex story I really saw this as.
No.
So I don't know that ending just really tracked with what we were given.
I feel like, I don't think it was unpacked enough. I think it was too quick at the end to then warrant that ending.
So what we're saying is, there were a lot of arcs here that probably could have been an issue or two shorter. But here was an example of, we probably needed another issue. The point is, people, there's no pleasing us, I guess.
That's how it is. And DC Comics, you really should call us more often to ask us. Please. Listen, especially now, AT&T.
Yeah. Look, we're a podcast, man. That's what we're here for. It's all with love. It's all with love.
That's true. Well, I mean, you and Zach were talking about Smallville, and you were laughing about, like, guys, okay, just remember, we really love this show. Like, Zach's been doing 7 seasons of his podcast. He loves that show, but when we poop on it, it's in love. For God's sake, Anthony's wearing a flannel red Clark Kent Smallville shirt right now. We love this guy.
Yeah, that's the same shirt I'm wearing now for this episode.
Yeah.
It's not a huge rotation of what I wear for these episodes, but that's
Clark
the thing.
He doesn't have a deep closet either. Clark's pretty.
But no, it is all love. Anyway, the other thing about this arc, I guess 2 things on the Apokolips side. I really did like this angle of the warring factions on Apokolips trying to seize power. That felt very fitting. What I really wrestled with, especially after rewatching and discussing the New Gods episodes from Superman the Animated Series.
Yeah.
At the end of this, Superman, sort of accepts the throne of Apokolips, but then is very quick to say, like, this is your planet and you need to move forward and find a way and free those who have been enslaved by Darkseid. And you get at least the beginnings of that actually happening. You get this, the story definitely gives you the sense that they have heeded, or they're going to heed his words.
Right.
And all I could think of was that it was such an impactful scene in the series finale of Superman the Animated Series.
Oh yeah.
When Superman throws the defeated Darkseid down to the people, and he's like, all right, do with him what you will.
And they carry him away.
And they tend to him.
Yes.
But that made so much sense.
Yes.
It was like, that's what this place is. This is what Darkseid has cultivated in all of these. There are broken, beaten people in despair. So this whole thing I felt was like way too optimistic.
Yes. like what we never really come to terms with is Apokolips is glorified Stockholm syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
Like you learn to treat your kidnapper or your like dictator as someone you love. Like you can't imagine knowing what to do with your life if this person didn't tell you what to do. And that does not, the end of the animated series tracks. This didn't. This felt weird.
Yeah.
But again, people, it is some of the best of this. So I would read it.
Yeah. It was, like I said, overall, I did enjoy it. Is this the place then when we get, I can't remember if it was this trade or a different one, where we get that one-off with Superman taking the sick children to the JLA watchtower? That might have been earlier in the series. I can't remember.
No, I think it was earlier. Yeah, I don't think it was this one.
I know we didn't talk about that one at all. That anytime you're dealing with, ill children, it's upsetting, so it was tough just in and of itself,
right.
But
that was in Hopes and Fears. Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. But, very heartwarming to see Superman doing that. I mean, I don't know. I guess what was your take on that? That
was kind of scary, actually.
Yeah.
Was that the one with Parallax and Sinestro and that one too? Is that the one you're talking about? The kidnapped kids?
I think. Oh no. It was just a single issue story where Superman takes a group of sick children to the watchtower for a day, and the Justice League creates this little scavenger hunt for them.
I can't remember where that was.
That's okay. I can't remember which trade. It was either here or it might have been Hopes and Fears, or I think it was here. No, I think it actually was in this one.
Oh, I don't know, man. I missed it.
In any event, it was there are definitely heartwarming aspects to the story, and I did not feel, I think it avoided some of the pitfalls of the road trip sort of thing.
Oh, okay.
Although they had Batman participating in this field trip to the watchtower. And I just said to myself, I was like, it's like, I don't want to nitpick about this story. It's like, just take it for what it is. It's a heartwarming tale. But I just felt like, I don't think Batman would be there, but I feel like Bruce Wayne would then write a huge check to the children wing of the hospital. Yeah. I felt like that would have been more in keeping. But, and that was, I think that was a Barry Kitson doing the art on that one. Yeah. But it was a Tomasi Gleason issue. But anyway, that was one of those other just one-offs.
Yeah.
All right, my friend, we're at Bizarro Verse.
Oh, me am not happy. Okay. How do you want to start this? Because want me to share why Bizarro is not my favorite character?
Yes.
Bizarro infuriates me because it makes me think too much. So especially this. I know that sounds really trivial, listeners, but I hate having to translate Bizarro speak while I'm reading these issues. And I think it takes away from the story itself because I'm going, wait, like, does he mean this? Oh, he means that. Oh, he doesn't mean this. And then the other characters, because Superman's trying to speak in Bizarro, but he's not great at it. That's the biggest takeaway that took away from me loving the story, is that it took me forever to read because I'm translating. Where are you at?
I have the same problem. And more and more that whenever, especially now over the course of doing this podcast and reading so much, it's like now I've had a few instances recently where I've bumped up against this, and it's the same thing. And it's like, I was high school valedictorian. I passed the bar exam on the first try.
Yeah, I'm no dummy.
I think I'm pretty sharp, but I don't know as I'm reading this, it's like, am I am I not thinking about it enough, or am I overthinking it? Because I
Yes.
feel, you know what, I feel like this is where I run into trouble sometimes, because there's the words are opposite, but then also the I mean, I guess like the nouns and adjectives, but also the verbs sometimes. And I guess
Yes.
that's where I run into the
Yes.
issue of like, what exactly are we trying to convey here?
Well, and then the grammar's terrible too, because it's not the right pronouns at the right. Yeah. So it's just, here's a deal. Bizarro to me is a character that should have been novelty. Like, that's cute for like that, like 4 panels, cute. But we had 4 issues trying to tell actually a pretty heartfelt story that I did not feel it did it honorably because of I had to read all that. Now, hold on though. The art is incredible.
Yeah. It is very
Art,
gorgeous.
it is just beautiful. Like it, so if you want to see something really cool, read just flip through it, go like, oh, this is incredible renditions of all these characters. I just couldn't do it, Anthony. It killed me. It killed me. And it was the last one.
You know, it's funny because I thought that Etrigan's rhyming drove me nuts, but
No.
I'll read an Etrigan story any day over the Bizarro speak. I really find it grating, and to your point, I really think it takes away from the effectiveness of this character. Like, you just heard this and the audience heard this when we covered the Bizarro episodes of Superman the Animated Series. Those were among my favorites because there you had all the me and Bizarro, but you didn't have the full extent of the backward speak to the extent where you have to try to decipher what's being said. And that allows you to latch on to the inherent tragedy of the character. And that's what works. And that's what you lose when you spend all this time. Audience, I would really love to know, are people, and you know what, here's actually an interesting question, because writers seem really committed to this backward speak, and does anyone actually like this?
Yeah, I don't know. Please tell us if we're wrong. I
also don't like, and I know this is a throwback, but I don't like Bizarro World.
Right.
I like the Bizarro who's a clone of Lex gone awry.
Agreed.
I feel like that works best, and especially for a modern setting, and it makes Bizarro distinct. When you then put him on a world full of Bizarros, that holds no appeal for me.
No, and like I think when you treat Bizarro in the weird, like Lex was kind of Dr. Frankenstein a little bit, creating and trying this, and it turns out to be the monster who's lovable but is misunderstood. That's great. And that's the right dose. I'm so with you that the whole planet, like, no. I did feel so. Now there's a Bizarro son, right?
Mm-hmm.
On their planet,
yeah,
which that has no closure, like because we never get closure.
He's in Hamilton County. That's where everyone ends up from another planet.
I swear, I see. That's a perfect example of why that's wrong.
Have you been to? They just call it Hamilton County. 300 miles north of Metropolis. But is it meant to be like Hamilton, New York? Like upstate New York?
I argue with, I know this is a ridiculous thing to argue with people about, but we argue about the location of Metropolis.
Right.
Like my freshman in high school daughter gets triggered when you watch the Smallville TV show.
Yeah.
She gets so pissed off. She's like, okay, how far away is Metropolis from Smallville? Can somebody please tell me how far it is? Because I feel like something happened to the Talon, and then they're magically able to drive to Metropolis quickly. But then it seems like Superman's got to run at super speed there pretty quick. So somebody tell me where Metropolis is. And there are people that think it's Chicago. There's people that think it's Chicago. There's others that think it's like Baltimore or that area that's near New York City, which is Gotham. I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, I feel like there have been maps at some point, like that DC put out that placed it in Delaware, sort of. But
they're liars.
Here's the thing: on the Smallville TV show, I think it's very clear that it's in Kansas.
Yeah.
But to your earlier question, as far as how far away, it depends on which season. Because if you watch the early seasons, it was clearly it was clearly it was like a couple of hours away. You know, at the end of
Yes.
season 2, Red K. Clark hops on that
Yes.
motorcycle and rides off, and you get the sense this guy's got a long drive ahead of him. In later
Yeah.
seasons, as they shifted more of the action to Metropolis, it became like a very close suburb of
Yeah.
Metropolis. That was the
Yes.
effect. So I don't
And then
think they knew.
Superman and Lois, when Ma Kent is dying, you see how long he's flying at super speed to get there.
Yeah.
I'm like, that doesn't seem close.
Right.
So it's just so funny how mad my teenager gets. Like, somebody tell me the answer to this question. But yeah, so how do we even get on that? Why do we talk about
No. Oh, Hamilton County. I was wondering if that was meant to be Hamilton, New York, which the only experience I have is that in my old job and my old role at my job, I used to have to do a lot of admissions recruitment, and there was this upstate New York swing that we would have to do every year. And the first year that I worked there, that was the rite of passage. And so it was like Buffalo, Rochester, Ithaca, Hamilton.
Yeah.
And it's, very rural up there. So I don't know if that was the inspiration for it, or if that's what it was meant to be.
No offense to all you upstate New Yorkers, but upstate New York is like Pennsylvania with an attitude.
I'm not, because it's funny, especially I think on my other podcast, my comic shop history, I've knocked upstate, and I feel like a couple of times people are like, "Hey, what?" It's you know what it is. My father's family is from there, and when I was a kid, like once a year, we would like take the 6-hour drive up to Rochester, and I think that sort of just colored my view of it. I don't know. But especially doing that trip, I was not happy to be doing that trip for work. So I feel like that just added to it. But yeah, there's not a ton up there, but who knows?
Listen, I grew up in New Jersey, so people are going to rib me for that alone. But we always have a little rivalry between anything New York and New Jersey. So,
but to your point, yes. So Rob Zorro and Boy Zorro, remain in Hamilton.
He's in Hamilton.
Yeah, in Hamilton. So I love the art here. I'm with you on that. And it was genuinely heartbreaking when Bizarro leaves, abandons Boy Zorro. So that moment I thought was effective. But otherwise, I did not like Bizarro World. I could do without the other versions of the Bizarro characters. And I really, if I never read another Bizarro speak issue again, I'll be perfectly happy.
So, do you want to talk about Action 1000?
Sure.
Because that was a cool reread for me. I love revisiting that because that was an awesome. I knew there was a moment I typed in, I knew Anthony would love the Reign of Superman nod that they had in the walk down memory lane through Action 1000. There's so many great like snapshots of all different like versions of the characters.
Right. Yeah. It's really cool as Superman is. I think the setup for it, right, is like a villain is like trapping him in time, right? And he's living all these different versions of his life, and it's taking us through the actual publishing history of the character. And so it was perfectly fitting for that milestone issue. What I loved, my newfound love of the Golden Age, and I loved those couple of pages where Clark is like, and it was like I was in the 30s and I didn't have X-ray vision and heat vision and all that, but like I just felt like so free, and it was so simple and pure. Like we knew who the bad guys were. And I feel like that really captured the sense of those early, like very dynamic, energetic, punchy, Golden Age stories. So yeah, I thought that was, I enjoyed that a lot. Overall, I really enjoyed Action 1000, and especially the Tomasi Gleason story.
So the last thing really to talk about is number 45.
Like my favorite issue. It was, they saved the best for last. And I'll be positive here. I'm very happy to have that issue in particular now in my head when I think of Superman, and not to put too fine a point on it or oversell it, but in a lot of ways, like it made the journey worthwhile. I when they're packing up the farm and Lois is mopping up the footprints.
Yeah.
Little John's foot. I mean, it, especially as a parent, it really gets you. I mean, what stood out to you about that issue?
So I wrote that, well, first of all, I said it's one of the best issues in the whole run. Like, I totally agree with you. I wrote down there are like Tomasi life lessons that he basically wrote in this issue, and there's 3. So one, you choose who you are when things don't go your way. And he wrote the differences between helping others and helping yourself. That's like Tomasi life lesson 1 to walk away with. Lesson 2 was really about this character. It's not about powers. It's about his character. It's not about what Superman can do. It's of who he is and how he uses his powers because of who he is. So that goes for all of us. Like, that goes for whatever your gifting is, whatever your skill set is, whatever your knowledge is. It's not about that. It's about your character. It's, do you do the right thing even when nobody's looking? That's what I loved about that life lesson. Last one, follow truth, seek justice, and stand with your family who always loves you. That's like the third Tomasi life lesson that we walk away from the Rebirth with. What do you think about all those?
I'm with you. Those all resonated. I also loved the quote about nothing gold can stay and needing to embrace change. Yeah. And, echoing, he shared the words with Jonathan that his own father taught him about how there's a season for everything. And yeah, I thought that was really resonant as we all go through our different phases, and sometimes when one phase is ending and another's beginning, and you can come to terms with it or try to, like they are here. They know that they're selling their farm and they're now living in the city. And other times, you don't really realize it until it's happened. But I thought that worked really well. I loved Lois taking the mailbox, and both Superman and Flash commenting about how that's right, not supposed to do that. But I thought that was a nice touch that they then had in their apartment. Yeah.
It really kind of encapsulates, I think, the best parts of the Rebirth run. Like, it really just makes a tiny... You could really honestly read the first few issues of Volume 1 and read 45 to understand the tone of what Tomasi and Gleason were trying to get across to readers about their love for this character. I really also loved what they did, not just in this issue, but I think across the general run, is you constantly get a reminder of how much Clark and Lois love each other. It is evident. And it's not just they're married. It's not just they're historically Clark and Lois. They truly love each other. And it's how they just act and talk to each other and hold each other. And even in hard times, just go, I am your partner. That's how it works. The last thing I really noticed, man, is it really drove home that Superman is a family book and not a superhero book. Like, it can be what a family needs to hear, and not just he's super and he's got a cape, and because he's an alien, he's got superpowers. It's who and how he brings people into his family and why they're important to him. So that's my general take from 45, and also the little nuggets that I took along the way. I think that's why that's my positive spin on all of the stuff that we were like about.
Well said. There's definitely there are a lot of those life lesson nuggets to be mined.
Yeah.
From this run. I agree with you in terms of the Lois and Clark relationship. Even in those road trip issues that I didn't love, there's a moment where I think John falls asleep and Clark's like, he grabs some wine and he's like, do you want to look at the stars and make out? And it's like, and again, especially with, I don't agree with this, but I think the notion sometimes like, oh, if you have a married couple, they feel so old. It's like, no, they don't have to. And I think that's a good example of showing how they can still be young and vibrant and everything. So I like that a lot. And it was, that issue, it really was a great finale because it did tie a lot together, and especially by repositioning them at the fair, and you get to see everyone, and Clark even remarks about how many people came out to say goodbye to them.
Yeah.
I guess, not to turn this into a complaint, but maybe it would have been nice to see more of them interacting with the town. I feel like you get it a little bit here and there, mostly with Kathy and Grandpa Cobb, but it would have been nice to get even more of that. But I guess they, especially with the way these stories unfolded and where the focus was, I don't know that there was necessarily real estate for that.
Yeah, and keep in mind too, like, they weren't there that long.
True.
They were only really there for maybe in our issues, 3 to 4 years. But they didn't interact with as many people as we think, like you just said. But yeah, I think this was a conscious effort by DC Comics. I don't think there's any mistake about the emphasis on Clark and Lois, family, having a son. I think there's been a lot of plans to retire Clark Kent. I think there's been a lot of comments and a lot of rumors going around too. Like at a certain point, 1938 to 2022 is now it's a big suspension of disbelief. Like this character has never aged or died or grown old. And like now in current comics, you're seeing he's graying a little bit and his powers are getting weaker. And I think this was conscious. Like they're going, this is the beginning towards a new chapter in Clark's either older chapter or of maybe eventual demise. Who knows?
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, well, and that points to what's to come. And as much as I will cover the Bendis run in its own episode in the future,
yeah,
I know you read it. So I'm just curious because I know that the reaction from a lot of people was not necessarily positive, even if for no other reason than people were enjoying what Tomasi and Gleason were doing. I mean, from your perspective, what were the biggest losses by them handing the baton to Bendis?
I think the biggest rub is that Bendis ages John. I think I've seen more, the terrible social media, like very hateful comments. Like, I'm not a fan of this at all. And we've talked about this, but to just go so off the rails where we're really seeing such cool dynamics unfolding at the age of 10, 11, to go whoop and just like go like 6 years forward, we lost a lot of cool growth as father, mother, son dynamics go. I think that really upset a lot of readers. I wonder though how, when Rebirth came out, it was a breath of fresh air from the New 52, which seemed bananas to me. I wonder if I go back and reread the Bendis stuff, even though it's only really been, I think, 2 years, I do wonder if I look at it away from the lens of, you took away Peter Tomasi and Patrick Gleason from me. You took away young John Kent. You shifted these tones. I wonder if I reread it, go, you know what, for what it is, it's still quality. Because I do love prior Bendis non-DC stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm a big fan of his work. I think, I don't know, it's almost like you appreciate the NFL coach when they're on somebody else's team, but when they take over your team, you're like, no, screw that guy.
Yeah, I would be curious to know if your view on that run changes. I mean, like I said, I've not read it yet, with the exception of the Man of Steel miniseries, but I am well aware of the aging up of John, and maybe I would feel differently when I read it. I don't know. The thing that I just find so puzzling
stuff too. Yeah.
Yes, I have thoughts on, even with that. Oh, I mean, I guess even in Man of Steel and the Action 1000 story, we touched on it. So I have some frame of reference for that. But specifically with aging up John, it's just so puzzling to me because it took you think about the decades that it took to get Lois and Clark married. Yes. And then how many more years it took for them to have a kid, right? And we skipped over John's first 10 years. We see his birth and then he's 10. And it just feels like it took so long. It took 80 years to get here. Yes. Like, just let this play out, even if they played it out in real time. So it takes 7 years for him to get from 10 to 17. It's just like, come on, you got to look at the big picture here. Or the other thing that I was thinking of is, like, through time travel shenanigans, like, you could kind of have your cake and eat it too. You can bring in an older version temporarily, or send Clark into the future, so you can have that dynamic play out for a period of time. But
like Legion, you got to have the Legion come. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah.
The frustrating thing about the whole ordeal, which is we're going a little off the rails at the end here, but I think the biggest issue with DC Comics now and the fans that have done the long haul is we've seen it go from DC Comics to Warner Brothers DC Comics to AT&T Warner Brothers DC Comics, and it go from comics to multimedia to corporate to conglomerate. And anytime it goes from small general store kind of mentality of comics to like boom, 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 bigger and bigger, the artistic creativity is lost. Like, I guarantee you that the chief execs at DC would want this and this and this, and they're hearing that's not how we're going to be able to market that. We're not doing that right now. And yeah, there's a lot more to unpack there, but I think that's what makes us sad, where the business side of comics gets in the way of the creative side of comics.
Yes. Well said. As we wrap up here, one thing that I don't think I mentioned when we were talking about the Eradicator, just going back to that first arc for a second, I did like his motivation felt perfectly on point, even though this was a revised version of the character. But the fact that he wants to purge the human side from John because the Kryptonian bloodline has been tainted, that felt very much in keep, even though now the means and the MO of the Eradicator have changed with these soul sucking powers or whatever you want to call them. But, but still the ultimate motivation definitely felt in keeping. So I just wanted to mention that. Was there anything else you wanted to say about this run before we wrap up?
Oh man, we talked. Once again, you and I did it. We're at 2 hours. We did okay.
I've just come to the conclusion that's the length of this podcast more often than not. I've stopped fighting it because I just feel like this is where the conversations typically go. We never stretch to try to hit 2 hours.
Yeah.
But honestly, this is just often where we land.
Everybody listening that has a commute, you get us on the way home and you get us on the way to work. Enjoy. You get the whole episode. No, man, I think we said plenty. I think we hit the tone of the books, and I really think we touched on why they went the way they did. The tone of the books, the characters are still important, and the idea of the family, I think, changed a lot in the mythos too, which is important.
And in the end, not just for this run, but also for the Jurgens run that I talked about last time, to sort of put a bow on all of this. While I didn't enjoy both runs the way I thought I would and the way a lot of other people seem to, I appreciate them. I really do appreciate the work of the creators, and Jurgens and Tomasi and Gleason. I enjoy their work generally. So, none of this is a knock on them per se. And more than anything else, I appreciate what this era did. I think it served a very important function. It, like you said, I mean, it was designed as a course correction after the New 52. I mean, as much as it sold and it did bring people into comics, in the end, especially when it comes to Superman, it seems like for most fans, it was not the core of the character that they were really looking for. And so I appreciate that this brought that back. And that for a lot of fans, this is a high point in their Superman reading journey. And I totally appreciate that. And to whatever extent it informed the Superman and Lois TV show, which I derive so much meaning and enjoyment from. Yeah. Even if these comic stories weren't my favorite, they lent themselves extremely well to what's happening on this other version of the story in a different medium. And so I see that it has a lot of value, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. That's if the sole importance of it was a means to an end to get us Superman and Lois, then it's worth it. I think it was the right time to do these books to then move the character forward into the 21st century better.
Yeah. Well, Bernie, as always, I appreciate your time, and I always have fun talking to you. And we're going to be doing this again soon. In a few episodes, I'm going to be kicking off a 5-part Donnerverse event where we'll be looking at the Superman of Richard Donner across media. And you will be joining me to reconsider the Superman Returns movie. So we'll see how it holds up all these years later. I'm excited to rewatch and discuss with you. So that's coming down the line a little bit.
Same. I think I've seen it in the theaters, and then I saw it once when it came out on DVD, and I've not seen it since. And we're gonna watch it. Yeah, my youngest is gonna watch it for the first time, so she's excited.
Good. I can't wait to compare notes. I've seen it maybe one more time than you on Blu-ray, but same type of experience. So that'll be a lot of fun. So thank you as always. As we said before, make sure you check out Bernie on the Oh Yeah Skokie Facebook page, and make sure you come back next week for an all new episode. We have a couple of standalone installments coming up before we head into that 5-part Richard Donner event. So a lot of cool stuff to come. Thank you as always for listening to the show. I really appreciate it. So come back next time. And until then, remember, it's about what you do. It's about action.